Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. In the mists of ancient Britain, a time when magic and mortals walked hand in hand, stood the fortress of King Uther Pendragon. His reign was not merely one of steel and crown, but a bulwark of peace against the encroaching tide of war and the dark whispers of prophecy. Yet, even the greatest of kings do not rule alone. His strength was a trinity of power, upheld by two men whose destinies were inextricably linked to his own. First, there was Merlin the Wise, a man of profound mystery and arcane knowledge. He was more than a mere advisor. He was a custodian of ancient truths, a master of a magic so old it was almost a part of the earth itself. His counsel was sought not for its comfort, but for its unnerving clarity. For Merlin saw not just the present, but the threads of fate weaving a tapestry of what was to come, a foresight both invaluable and unsettling to all who heard it. By his side stood Sir Ulfius, the living embodiment of knightly virtue. His reputation was forged not in the shadow of magic, but in the heat of battle. He was a protector of the realm, a man whose chivalry was matched only by his martial prowess and legendary courage. Where Merlin offered the wisdom of the ages, Sir Ulfius provided the unyielding strength to enforce it. But even with such formidable allies, the king's fate was not to be a fairy tale ending. His queen, Igraine, had borne him a son, a baby whose cries echoed with the promise of a golden age. Yet, the same prophecy that foretold the child's birth also foretold the king's demise. From his deathbed, Uther, racked by fever, looked to Merlin. The kingdom, the seer warned, would not only fall into confusion but would be devoured by the treachery of lesser men. To protect the infant, the true heir to the throne, Merlin and Ulfius were given a sacred task: to take the baby away to a place of safety, to be raised in obscurity until he was ready to claim his birthright. Uther, his final act, an absolute trust in his old friend, agreed. As Merlin stood over the cradle, his gaze was not fixed on the child, but on the fragmented visions dancing at the edges of his sight. He saw a great stone, ancient and unyielding, and a sword plunged deep within it, a blade waiting for a hand yet to be forged by destiny, a hand that would have to earn the right to touch it, for the sword's own magic would reject any hand that was not worthy of the throne. With the passing of Uther Pendragon, the realm plunged into a darkness of its own making. The kingdom, once a single, unified body, now lay fragmented, its pieces seized by lesser kings and ambitious barons. For 18 long and sorrowful years, the land was a wilderness of deceit and avarice, where the strongest hand, not the most rightful, held sway. The despair of the people reached the heavens, and at last the Archbishop of Canterbury, the highest spiritual authority in the land, sought counsel from the only man who could see beyond the veil of chaos, Merlin. Merlin, in his inimitable wisdom, offered not an army, but a promise. A new king would rise, a ruler from Uther's bloodline, who would be not only wiser, but more valiant than any before him. To reveal this chosen one, the sorcerer devised a spectacle, a test of divine right that would silence all doubters. With a wave of his hand, he conjured a great stone, ancient and majestic, and upon it a solid anvil of unyielding steel. Into this anvil he thrust a sword, a blade of polished silver and tempered might, and inscribed upon its surface a challenge for all to see. Whoever shall put this sword out from the anvil shall be the rightful king of Britain. The news of this magical challenge spread like wildfire, drawing ambitious and greedy figures from every corner of the land to London, each believing they were the one destined to claim the throne. The Archbishop, witnessing the fervor, felt a flicker of hope, a sentiment Merlin merely smiled at, for he knew the truth of the revelation would transcend all expectations. Unseen by the crowds, a rival wizard, consumed by envy for Merlin's power, attempted to foil the prophecy. He cast his own spell, hoping to forever bind the sword to the anvil. But his magic, born of jealousy, was a feeble thing against Merlin's prophecy, a tapestry woven with the very essence of fate. His spell merely left the sword's blade with a chilling coldness that repelled all who touched it, all but one, for the inscription was more than just words. It was a living beacon. Whenever a true heir to the throne passed by, the letters would glow with a faint, pulsing light, a secret sign of destiny that only Merlin, with his unparalleled vision, could perceive from afar, silently watching and waiting for the one true hand to reach for the blade. On that frosty Christmas day, the air in London crackled with the energy of a massive tournament, a spectacle that drew over 20,000 lords and ladies from across the realm. Amidst the throng of nobility and knights, Sir Ector arrived with his two sons, Sir Kay the Elder, a knight in his own right, and Arthur, a boy of 18, who served as his brother's esquire. Arthur's role was one of quiet duty. He proudly carried the family standard, his heart swelling with pride at his brother's prowess. In the heat of the joust, Sir Kay, his blade singing a defiant song against his opponent's shield, faced a formidable adversary known as Balamorius. It was a contest of 1,000 sparks and clashing steel, but in the final fateful moment, Sir Kay's sword shattered, leaving him disarmed. With a shout, he sent Arthur on a frantic errand to retrieve another sword from their father's tent so that his honor might be saved. Arthur, rushing through the chaos of the tournament grounds, found the tent empty and every weapon within it gone. Desperate, his mind raced, and then a memory as clear as the winter air came to him. He had seen a sword plunged deep into an anvil standing near a church in the square. Its guardians, too, had been lured away by the spectacle, leaving the blade unguarded and waiting. With no time to lose, Arthur ran to the stone. He grasped the hilt of the sword, pulling with the intent of a squire, but it would not budge. The blade remained as unyielding as the steel in which it was set. Dejected, he paused for a moment, and his true heart's desire, not for glory, but for his brother's honor, surfaced. He whispered a quiet wish to himself, a simple prayer to help Sir Kay. And as he did, he felt the blade, once a solid part of the stone, surrender itself to his hand. With a final, gentle tug, Arthur drew the sword forth, completely unaware that he had just pulled not a replacement weapon, but the destiny of a kingdom. Sir Kay, seeing the legendary sword in Arthur's hand, was immediately struck with a mixture of awe and fear. A moment of clarity and greed flashed through his mind. He quickly questioned Arthur about its origins and, upon hearing the simple truth, conceived a treacherous plot. He instructed Arthur to remain silent and to summon their father, Sir Ector, to the scene. The moment Sir Ector arrived and saw the magnificent blade, he turned to his elder son and asked how he had come by it. Sir Kay, his face a mask of false triumph, claimed he had drawn the sword from the anvil himself. Sir Ector, a man of profound wisdom and unwavering honor, was not so easily deceived. He challenged his son, telling him that if he had truly performed the miracle, he should be able to push the sword back into the anvil and pull it out again, but this time with witnesses. Sir Kay, now a prisoner of his own deceit, strained and struggled with all his might. His face turned a deep shade of purple with the effort, and a searing burn as if the steel itself rejected his deceitful touch, branded his hands, leaving a faint, permanent scar. He failed, confessing that he could not perform the miracle. It was then that Arthur, his innocence still intact, stepped forward and asked if he could try, explaining that he had only drawn it the first time to help his brother. He looked at Sir Ector, his young face clouded with confusion, and asked if he was angry. Sir Ector, his face a mask of bewilderment and dread, was not angry. Instead, he had Sir Kay hand the sword to Arthur. As Arthur pushed the sword back into the stone and then pulled it out twice with effortless grace, Sir Ector's face shifted to one of profound awe. A silent tear rolled down his cheek as he realized the true destiny of the boy he had raised as his own. He knelt, a gesture of ultimate fealty, and revealed the truth. He was not Arthur's father. He told Arthur how Merlin and Sir Ulfius had brought him the infant 18 years prior, and though he had never known his true father, he now believed Arthur to be the son of Uther Pendragon. Overwhelmed, Arthur wept, declaring that he would rather have Sir Ector as his father than be the King of Britain. In that moment, Merlin and Sir Ulfius appeared, as if from the very air, and Merlin explained that this was the moment he had been waiting for all along. He promised Arthur that he would be the greatest king who ever lived, a king of light in a world of darkness. Arthur, his heart still torn, made a final promise to Sir Ector. He would give Sir Kay a position of honor in his kingdom if Sir Ector would, in turn, be his father forever. The sun rose on the grand platform where a spectacle of destiny was about to unfold. On this day, the fate of Britain would be decided not by blood or battle, but by a simple test of worthiness. One by one, 19 proud kings and 16 ambitious dukes stepped forward, each confident that the sword of Uther Pendragon would yield to his hand. But one by one, they all failed, their efforts a testament to their own avarice, not their virtue. Defeated, they turned their anger on Merlin, accusing him of a sorcerer's trick and imploring the archbishop to disregard the ruse. It was in this moment of mounting chaos that Merlin and his small party approached, with Merlin, Ulfius, and the humble Sir Ector and Sir Kay by his side. The sorcerer presented a young, unassuming man to the archbishop. He was Arthur, the true son of Uther Pendragon. The archbishop, witnessing the boy's quiet dignity, granted him a chance to prove his claim. As Arthur stepped onto the platform, the crowd, once a chorus of dissent, fell silent. With a quiet grace, he grasped the hilt and, with a gentle tug, pulled the sword from the anvil. A collective gasp of disbelief and joy erupted from the crowd. He performed the miracle not once, but 3 times, each pull silencing another pocket of doubt. The 3rd time, as he drew the blade forth, the sun, which had been hidden behind the clouds all morning, broke through, casting a single ethereal beam of light onto him. It illuminated his face and the gleaming blade, a celestial sign that silenced the last whispers of doubt among the crowd. But even with a sign from the heavens, the path to the throne was not without its final obstacles. Many of the defeated kings and nobles, their pride wounded and their ambition unfulfilled, refused to accept the outcome and demanded further trials. The Archbishop, seeking to unite the fragmented kingdom, agreed. The sword challenge was repeated not twice, but 3 more times. In the final trial, a rival king, still determined to expose what he believed to be a trick, attempted to grab the sword from Arthur's hands as he drew it. But an invisible force, born of the sword's own magic, repelled him, throwing him back into the crowd as if he had been struck by lightning. After this 4th and final trial, the last vestiges of doubt vanished. The people, witnessing not only Arthur's power but his humility and quiet strength, were completely won over. The Archbishop, seeing a true king emerge from the chaos, made it official. With Merlin's guidance, Arthur went on to build a great kingdom called Camelot, a place that would become a beacon of chivalry and hope, drawing knights of noble intent from across the land to become the fabled Knights of the Round Table. At the heart of King Arthur's court, a figure of peerless valor and noble lineage stood apart: Sir Gawain. He was not merely the king's nephew, but a knight of renowned stature, with hair the color of spun gold and a reputation for honor that shone as brightly as his polished armor. His sword, a testament to his commitment to justice, was an extension of his own unyielding will. On a frigid Christmas Eve, as the court was deep in its festive cheer, an uninvited and unforeseen guest shattered the merriment. A sudden, unnatural gust of wind snuffed out every torch in the great hall, plunging the room into an eerie darkness that was only broken by the faint, menacing glint of a great battle axe. From the shadows, a colossal figure emerged. He was the Green Knight, a being draped head to toe in verdant green, carrying a branch of holly in one hand and his fearsome axe in the other. The silence that followed his arrival was thick with a magic that was ancient and untamed, a force far older than even Merlin's own sorcery. A collective shiver ran through the assembled knights, a tremor of deep, primal fear. The Green Knight's voice, a boom that echoed through the stone hall broke the spell. He proclaimed that he had come seeking the bravest knight among them to face his unique challenge. Before any knight, his pride and valor roused, could step forward, King Arthur, the ever-prudent sovereign, demanded to know the terms of the test. The Green Knight's proposition was a chillingly simple game. A knight would deliver a single, unrestrained stroke with the axe to him. In return, the champion must swear to seek him out exactly 1 year hence at the mysterious Green Chapel to receive an identical stroke in exchange. It was a bargain of life and death, a wager of honor against a fate unknown. Roused by the Green Knight's challenge and the stunned silence of the court, Sir Gawain's spirit, aflame with valor, stepped forth. With a solemn nod, he accepted the impossible wager. He took the Green Knight's massive axe, a weapon of brutal simplicity, and with one fluid, powerful motion, swung it. The blade met its mark, severing the knight's head from his colossal frame in a single clean stroke. But what followed was a moment that defied all known laws of nature. The Green Knight's body remained upright, and from the severed head, a voice boomed, full of chilling mirth. It did not bleed, but from the wound, a swirling vortex of green mist emanated, a silent curse that coiled around Gawain. It was a tangible, chilling reminder of the promise he was now bound to keep. With an unnerving calm, the knight's torso retrieved its own head and departed, leaving the court in a stunned, horrified silence. A year passed, each day a weight on Gawain's soul, a countdown to his grim appointment. Finally, the time came, filled with a solemn resolve and burdened by the gravity of his vow. He clad himself in his finest armor. After a final, poignant farewell to his king and his court, he mounted his steed and rode out from the safe haven of Camelot. His journey was a trial by fire, a pilgrimage through a land that seemed to reject his presence. For days and nights, he rode through treacherous landscapes, facing down wolves whose hunger was matched only by their ferocity, and giants whose shadows stretched for miles. But he pressed on, his path guided by the unyielding light of his honor. Along the way, he encountered an ancient hermit who, with eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 years, warned him of a hollow land where truths were bent and promises were twisted, a place not on any map. It was then that Gawain knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was the very direction he was headed. He was not just journeying to a chapel. he was journeying into the very heart of a magical deception. Gawain's arduous journey was nearing its end as he rode through the desolate wilderness. Just as his resolve was beginning to wane, a magnificent and formidable castle, standing in defiant contrast to the barren land, appeared before him. The lord of the castle, a man of great charisma named Bertilak de Hautdesert, welcomed Gawain with a hospitality that was as grand as his fortress. He invited the weary knight to stay, promising 3 days of feasting and respite before his solemn appointment. On the 3rd day, as Gawain prepared to depart, Lady Bertilak made one final, desperate play. She presented him with a gift, an enchanted girdle of green silk, a trinket she claimed would protect him from any blade or blow. As her fingers brushed his, the touch was not of warmth, but of ice, a cold sensation that made his skin crawl, as if the magic was not a gift, but a trap. Torn between his honor and the very human fear of the Green Knight's axe, Gawain made a choice that would haunt him. He accepted the girdle, concealing it beneath his armor, a silent betrayal of his pact with Lord Bertilak. He knew, with a certainty that was as sharp as a sword's edge, that he had failed. He had betrayed his host's trust and his own honor. But the raw, primal fear of death was a more powerful force than he had ever imagined. Finally, after his long and treacherous journey, Gawain came to the Green Chapel. It was not a grand sanctuary, but an eerie, desolate place, a hollow knoll where the very air felt thick with dread. The Green Knight was waiting, a formidable figure in the gloom, and he greeted Gawain with a chilling cheerfulness, telling him it was time to settle their debt. Gawain, his heart heavy with the secret of the green girdle, sank to his knees. He bowed his head, baring his neck to the blade, and waited for the inevitable blow. The Green Knight's axe descended, a whistling sound of steel cutting through the air, but stopped just short of its mark. Gawain, confused, waited again. The axe descended a second time, and again it stopped. The third time, he could not bear the psychological torture any longer. With a cry of anger and confusion, he demanded that the Green Knight finish the job. The Green Knight, instead of striking, let out a great laugh. He explained that Gawain had proven himself true in all things, save for one. He had kept the girdle to save his life. It was a coward's choice, a single moment of weakness that had stained his otherwise unblemished honor. As he spoke, Gawain bowed his head in profound shame, confessing his failure, the weight of his deceit finally released. It was in that moment of raw honesty that the Green Knight revealed his true form. He was none other than Lord Bertilac, and the entire event, the challenge, the journey, the temptation at the castle was a test of character, orchestrated by the powerful sorceress Morgana Le Fay. Bertilac told him that honor is not a fixed state, but a choice made day by day, and that in the very act of striving, even if one fails, one finds their true worth. Gawain, hearing the words, felt their truth resonate in his soul. He thanked Lord Bertilac not for sparing his life, but for the profound wisdom he had imparted. He rode back to Camelot, the green girdle no longer a symbol of his shame, but of his failure and redemption. He was not the same man who had left, for he had learned that a true knight's strength lies not in his sword arm, but in the humility to face his own imperfections. As the Green Knight's final stroke, the one that stopped inches from Gawain's neck, hummed with a forgotten magic, a sound that lingered in his ears, Gawain carried the echo of that magic with him, a constant reminder of the day he chose to be a better man. At the court of Carlisle, King Arthur, the legendary sovereign, sat in his great hall, surrounded by the fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table. Among them was his nephew, Sir Gawain, a knight renowned not only for his valor in battle, but for his noble and chivalrous spirit. It was in this setting of peace and camaraderie that the tranquility was shattered by a sudden, frantic intrusion. A damsel, her clothes torn and her face streaked with grief, burst into the hall, her desperate pleas echoing off the stone walls. Her husband, she wept, had been stolen and enslaved by a wicked knight from a place called Tarn. She pleaded with the king, her eyes wide with sorrow and fear, to slay this villain and bring her husband back. Arthur, ever the hero, was moved by her distress and, in truth, excited by the prospect of a new challenge. He declared with a booming voice that no knight who enslaved the innocent would escape the swift justice of Camelot. With the confidence of a king who had never known fear, Arthur set out alone. He was armed with his trusty spear and the legendary sword, Excalibur, and a carefree whistle on his lips. Little did he know, the damsel's tale was a masterful illusion, a deceptive facade woven by the treacherous Queen Morgana Le Fay. To an ordinary eye, her torn clothes and wild grief were a genuine display of sorrow, a story of an injustice that needed righting. But had Merlin been there, he would have seen the faint, shimmering threads of black magic clinging to her rags, a silent testament to the deception she was perpetrating. Arthur, in his heroic zeal, had walked directly into a trap laid by his greatest enemy, as Arthur rode into a dark wood. The joyful whistle that had once been on his lips died. An unnatural silence, thick and suffocating, descended upon him, and a cold, creeping fear, a sensation utterly foreign to him, seeped into his bones. He passed a black lake, its surface mirroring a sky that was not there, and saw trees with strange, skeletal branches and ragged crows perched upon them like sentinels of a forgotten dread. At last, he came to the knight's castle, a fortress so monstrous it resembled an enormous human skull, a physical manifestation of malevolence. From the castle, a figure in black armor rode out. He was the Black Knight, a terrifying figure whose armor was not merely black but seemed to consume all light around him, creating a small, impossibly dark void. This oppressive shadow was a tangible manifestation of Morgana's magic, a force that choked the courage from anyone who drew near. Arthur, his legendary bravery stolen from him, fell to the ground, almost fainting from the sheer weight of the enchantment. The knight, later revealed to be Gromer Summer Jure, and an unwilling servant of Morgana, boomed a question at the prostrate king, asking why he should not simply lop off his head. Then, the true nature of the trap was revealed. Standing beside the knight was the very woman who had sent him on this quest, Morgana Le Fay herself. Disguised as the damsel in distress, Arthur, in his utter defeat, could only beg for pity. But the words were not his own. They were a hollow echo of a forgotten king who had once knelt to Morgana, a ghostly trace of her past victories against men. The knight, refusing to grant him an easy death, gave him a year and a day to return with the correct answer to a single, impossible riddle. What is it that women want most in the world? If Arthur failed to answer correctly, he would die. When the story of Arthur's inexplicable fear reached the court, Sir Gawain, his noble nephew, cried that it must have been sorcery that had caused such a display. Without hesitation, he joined his king, and together they set out to find the one thing that could save Arthur's life, the answer to Morgana's wicked riddle. They traveled the length and breadth of the kingdom, from opulent castles to humble mud-caked hovels, seeking an answer to Morgana's wicked riddle. They stopped every woman they met, from queens in their silken robes to peasants in their worn wool. The answers they received were as varied as the women who gave them. Some longed for jewels, others for a good husband, some for security, others for spiritual fulfillment, and one even, with a wistful sigh, for strawberry jam. They amassed a veritable catalog of answers, a notebook filled with a jumble of conflicting truths, but in their hearts Both Arthur and Gawain knew they had failed. No single answer seemed to possess the power to break an enchanted spell. None felt like the singular truth they sought. The deadline loomed, and all they had was a tangled web of speculation, their hope dwindling with each passing day. In the final days of their fruitless search, they encountered an old woman living on the very edge of the kingdom. She, a crone with eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 years, did not give them a direct answer, but a riddle of her own. A river flows not with a man's will, but with a woman's. What is it that turns the tide? She left them to ponder this, adding yet another layer of profound confusion to their search. Their frustration was only compounded by the arrogant pronouncements of others. The wife of a wealthy merchant, a woman of great influence and little empathy, laughed scornfully at the very idea of love or honor, declaring that the only thing that truly mattered was a woman's name, whispered with reverence in the halls of power. A kind of immortality bought with influence and cunning. With each conflicting response, their quest seemed more and more futile, a dreadful realization dawning upon them that the answer they sought was something they had never considered, something they had to earn, not just find. And then, on the very last day before their return, a final, unbidden opportunity presented itself in the form of a loathly lady by a stream. Just as all hope seemed lost, a figure appeared by the stream, a woman who was a walking contradiction. She was dressed in the finest silks and velvets, her attire befitting a queen, yet her features were a study in grotesquerie. She was horrendously fat, her eyes were marred by a bad squint, and when she smiled, a mouthful of teeth, not merely yellow but seeming to be made of polished bone, were revealed. It was a grin that held not just mischief, but a primal, almost predatory hunger. She addressed Arthur directly, her voice a low and knowing hum that resonated with the sound of the stream itself. She told him that she knew his question, and more importantly, she knew the only answer that would save his life. But she would not give it freely. Her price was a single, shocking condition. She demanded to marry Sir Gawain. Gawain, hearing this pronouncement, went as pale as a ghost, his face a vivid study in internal conflict. A part of him, the human part, recoiled in revulsion at the thought of being bound to such a creature, but then his nobler thoughts, the very essence of his being as a knight of the Round Table, took hold. The oath he had sworn to his king, the vow of loyalty that was a burning light in his heart, was a force far greater than his own desires. He looked at his uncle, whose life was hanging in the balance, and with a solemn resolve, he pledged to marry her. With her condition met, the ugly woman, her grin now one of triumph, leaned in and whispered the secret answer to Arthur. She had given him the means to save his life, but at a cost to his nephew's happiness and future, a price that only a knight of Gawain's character would ever agree to pay. The morning light, which had once seemed to mock him, now filled Arthur with a newfound, almost defiant confidence. He rode alone to the dread castle of Tarn, the words of the Loathly Lady ringing in his ears, a precious and dangerous secret. As he approached, the Black Knight, a figure of consuming darkness, rode out to meet him, his voice a guttural demand for the answer. Arthur, no longer the terrified king who had fallen to the ground in fear, spoke with a clear and resonant voice that cut through the oppressive magic. He declared the answer to the wicked riddle, that what women desire most in the world is that they should have their will and that they should rule over men. The moment the words left his lips, a profound and earth-shattering change occurred. The Black Knight, as if struck by a lightning bolt of truth, did not just drop his sword. He felt a sudden, explosive release of agony, 1,000 iron chains, unseen by mortal eyes, but felt by his tormented soul, snapped within him, and a swirl of dark energy, the very essence of Morgana's oppressive magic, fled his body, dissipating into the sunlight. He fell to his knees, his black armor crumbling and flaking away to reveal his true self. Gromer Summerjor, a noble knight who had been an unwilling slave to Morgana. With the spell broken, he begged Arthur to allow him to serve at the Round Table, his freedom a gift he would forever cherish. As Arthur spoke, the dread castle of Tarn, a fortress of pure malevolence, began to shatter. Its stones did not fall but dissolved into a fine, black sand that was carried away on the wind. A final, chilling whisper of Morgana's defeat that settled over the land. The unnatural silence of the dark wood was broken by the joyful songs of birds, and the black lake once again reflected the blue sky. The enchantment was gone, replaced by the truth, and a victory had been won not with a sword, but with a simple, profound answer. Arthur's heart, though joyful at his victory, was heavy with a sorrow that gnawed at his conscience. He had been saved, but at a terrible price. His noble nephew, Sir Gawain, was now bound in marriage to the ugly woman. The wedding preparations, a week of somber formality, were a stark contrast to the celebratory mood of a typical royal union. During the feast, everyone at court, from the highest lord to the lowliest servant, was meticulously polite, but the bride herself seemed determined to make their discomfort known. Her laughter was not a giggle, but a bone-chilling cackle that caused the wine goblets on the table to tremble and a few of the younger pages to flee in terror. A moment of grotesque discord in the grand celebration. Gawain, though the most polite of all, found himself unable to maintain the facade when he was finally alone with his new wife. He wept, his heart heavy with a grief he could not suppress. The woman, seeing his tears, asked him why he was so upset in a moment of raw, unvarnished honesty. Gawain confessed that it was her old age, her ugliness, and her low birth that caused him such pain. The woman, with a surprising calm, countered his confessions with arguments that were both wise and sharp. She spoke of her wisdom and discretion, and of how her very ugliness would prevent rivals and keep him safe. She then posed a question that struck at the very heart of this chivalric code. Does nobility depend on birth or character? Could you not teach me to be noble? Ashamed by his own discourteous words, Gawain bowed his head and offered a heartfelt apology. It was in that moment, as Gawain's noble spirit shone through his personal disgust, that the magic began to work. A soft, golden light emanated from his body, a visible sign of his true character. As the light touched the ugly woman, her features began to soften and shift, the ancient curse melting away like snow under a warm Sunday. She transformed into a young, beautiful girl. She then explained that both she and her brother had been enslaved by Morgana Le Fay, and that only the kindness of a truly noble spirit could save her. She looked at Gawain, her eyes now filled with love, and told him that the choice to accept her as his wife, beautiful or not, was truly his this time. Gawain, standing before the woman who had just undergone such a miraculous transformation, was utterly speechless. He looked at her, now a vision of youthful beauty, and a profound realization dawned upon him. He had chosen honor over his own desires, a choice that had been the very key to her salvation. He took her hand, his own trembling with emotion, and said he would be honored to be her husband. He had fallen in love not with her physical beauty, but with the wisdom and noble spirit she had shown him when she was at her most unappealing. The next morning, the court, having heard the strange and wondrous tale, was astounded. A second wedding feast was hastily arranged, this one filled with genuine joy and celebration. It was said that Gawain and his lady, who revealed her name to be Ragnell, lived happily together for many years, their love a testament to a bond forged not in beauty, but in honor and truth. Ragnell, now free from the curse of Morgana, wasted no time in proving her worth. Her first act as Gawain's wife was to use her newly freed magic to restore the land around the former castle of Tarn, where black sand had once been a final, chilling whisper of Morgana's defeat. Wildflowers now bloomed in a riot of color, a vibrant symbol of life and hope returning to a once desolate land. On the second wedding day, Arthur, humbled by the profound lesson, made a new decree, a new ideal for his kingdom. The Knights of the Round Table, he declared, would not only defend the weak and uphold the law, but they would also swear an oath to always seek wisdom over force and honor over pride. It was a new beginning for Camelot, a kingdom built not just on strength, but on the true nobility of its knights, a lesson learned from Gawain's trials and Ragnell's redemption. The strange and beautiful tale of the ugly wife would be told on many a winter's night, a reminder that true beauty and nobility lie not in appearance, but in the heart.